Given that 2024 is coming to an end, let's take a little review of World of Tanks console and whether or not you guys' prediction that the game is slowly dying is actually true. And so with that being said, what are we going to cover in today's video? I'm going to give some kind of review of how the entire year has gone, as well as actually cover some of the things that I think the game could really do with in upcoming years. If it is to continue, and certainly if it actually wants to grow in size, then that's kind of what I'm going to give, at least in my opinion. But I'm interested to see what your guys' opinions are on the state of the game at the moment. Of course, it's probably not the best time since they have just released the T249, which has got a lot of hate, but hey ho, we'll go with it and kind of take the whole year as it stands. So, first things first, what is my overall opinion of this year on World of Tanks? Well, I think it's been a very mixed one. We've seen the introduction of a few decent things. We've seen quite a few maps at least make their return, which I guess whether you want to give Wargaming credit for reintroducing maps that were already in the game or not, either way, the game has certainly got a ton more maps than we previously had, and maybe or maybe not we'll actually get another one coming in before the end of the year, but we'll just have to wait and see. Nothing confirmed or anything like that, but it would be nice to see maybe one map or something like that added into the game before the end of the year. I think that would be a perfect way to kind of end up the year. But in terms of the actual content of the game, have we received any major updates that have been mind-blowing? I don't really think so. And although we've seen the introduction of new tech tree lines, they seem to be very delayed, and there's been a massive focus, at least this year and the previous year, on the release of premium tanks on a really crazy rate, to the point where we've seen hundreds of premium tanks over the last 2 years, most likely, or at least maybe not hundreds, but maybe like coming up to 100 premium tanks, or at least new premiums, considering Cold War, considering World War II, and the release of a lot of them throughout the time that we've been playing. And at least recently, the actual state of those premium tanks has been crazy. Like, we've seen the introduction of the Weasel Mark 1, which is, if you play Cold War, just a terror. We've seen the release of the T249, obviously, which has been an absolute nightmare and genuinely broken tier 10. So that has been really, really good. Hopefully we'll see some nerfs to the T249. I can't wait if that actually gets nerfed. That would be amazing, because it is literally in a broken state right now and completely nullifies anyone trying to play the game if someone decides to YOLO you, which, you know, I mean, if we think back to artillery, the whole annoying or major concern or annoyance with artillery was that you couldn't do anything against it and you could be one shot. So they removed the one shot, and you still can't really do anything about it for the most part, but at least you can't just be one shot by it, unless you're playing like a tier 8 light tank or something, but that's not so much of an issue, and remember, that doesn't happen very often. But in terms of the T249, you can be playing absolutely perfectly in the right position, and if one decides to YOLO you, well, that's all your hit points gone, unless you're playing a tank that it literally cannot pen, and even if it does, that's 200 damage. So releasing tanks like that has been a fat L for Wargaming. I absolutely despise the release of the T249. And it was definitely way too broken. Could it have been balanced? I actually think it could have done if it actually got the overheat mechanic and they reduced the amount of damage it can deal in one go, so that it can't just clip out any other light tank in the game like twice or 3 times over, or clipping out tier 8s 3 times over. You know, that sort of thing should definitely not be in the game. It's not fun for anyone that you're basically facing, and it also makes the tank very vulnerable when you're reloading, because you have a long reload time, and although you might be able to clip things out, you might feel a bit more useless than if you had like a constant something to do, where, you know, maybe you're dealing a little bit less damage. So that sort of thing I think could definitely be changed and should never ever be released. The whole point about not just being able to delete things in the game, or at least having major drawbacks when it comes to even being able to delete things, like the KV2, where you can only really one-shot a very minor amount of things, and there's a big difference between dealing like 900 damage, which can take out, you know, the same tier tank, maybe, but most of the time not actually able to do that, and the sacrifice of the pen, whereas the T249 doesn't really get any of that and can delete everything. So yeah, definitely Wargaming need to rethink their strategy on creating premium tanks, and definitely take a big look at what they actually thought about or how they're testing these vehicles before they come into the game. Because it's not just the T249. We've seen the introduction of the Malo, which was last year, where we saw the introduction of just genuinely borderline. You could see how OP they were going to be just based off the stats. So I don't know what is going on, whether it is a corporate decision to try and sell more of these vehicles. I don't know, but equally, I don't think that, you know, having to nerf these tanks when they come in is a good option either. But in terms of the gameplay ability and the actual ability to play the game fairly, then yes, you should nerf these tanks. They are absolutely blatantly overpowered. Should you refund everyone that actually bought the vehicle because you've changed it? I think so. I don't know if it's actually legally obligated to refund people, but I think from a business standpoint, if you do change it, it is best to refund people for sure, even if you legally don't have to refund people. I think it is a thing that you should be doing. It's your mistake for bringing in such a broken tank, and people shouldn't be punished who decided to support your game in that regard. Now, there's a lot of hate towards people who are playing the T249. I don't think it really matters. In all honesty, it is not the players that are the problem when it comes to having these vehicles. They just should simply not be in the game. So, you know, we should be standing up against the release of these sorts of tanks and making our thoughts known to Wargaming so that these things don't happen again. But yes, if they come out and they sort it, then that's great. But do I have 100% surety that they are going to do that? No, but I would hope that they do come out and change the vehicle, as it is genuinely just completely broken in the meta on the game, and pretty much makes any tank useless bar these super heavies if you're on a one-on-one fight with this thing. You don't even have time to react, which is also that thing. It can clip you out from full health in your super heavy like a super conqueror, but you can't actually react fast enough. Literally, physically, you cannot react fast enough to be able to do any damage back to it most of the time, unless, of course, it comes, like, face onto you. So, yeah, I mean, a tank that you can't do anything to, but it can remove all your hit points, that does not sound in any way, shape, or form balanced or well thought out, in my opinion. So those are kind of the broken tanks. They're not just the only ones. There's been quite a few that have been released, and although they have made some changes to how the ATGMs work in Cold War to try and avoid the YOLOing weasel toes going around everywhere, which was a good change, definitely a much better change. They supplemented this by introducing these autocannons, which are basically just as bad. So yeah, hopefully they sort out the autocannons and maybe make some changes to all of the autocannons to make them toned down to the point where, you know, you don't feel like it's just ruining the experience of pretty much anyone that isn't using an autocannon in Cold War. Now, moving on over to the kind of state of how many players are playing the game. Now, for those of you wondering, you can typically see at peak times anywhere from about 14,000 to 20,000 people playing the game. So it obviously depends on time of year. In the summertime, there's typically less players, depending on school times and that sort of stuff, because there are school kids that will play the game. But during like June, you'll see that there are less players playing the game just due to the fact that more people are outside. And in the winter, you'll see more people playing the game, especially during Christmas events as people have time off work and stuff like that. So it can go maybe even higher than 20,000. But from what I've seen, anywhere from about 12 minimum all the way up to about 20,000 online at one time during kind of peak hours. Obviously, in non-peak hours, it can go down to like 8,000, 6,000, 7,000, somewhere in that region. But that has been my kind of view, how I've seen the actual player base numbers at any one time, which definitely means that the game is not dying. The game is definitely not dying, with an active player base of about, anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 on average throughout the entire day. That is definitely not a day game. As much as many people would like to believe, it is still very much alive. And so in terms of activity, is it the peak of World of Tanks console? Has it come even close to what it was previously? No, I don't think so. I mean, the top amount that I've seen online maybe years and years ago was like 30,000, 35,000, maybe slightly more, which obviously is a big substantial change. But at the end of the day, it's still very, very popular with a lot of people. And I don't see that the game is just going to disappear this year or the next year, essentially. So provided that they don't keep on doing what they're doing for 3-4 years in a row, then yeah, I think that the game is still going to be here in a couple years at least. And given the recent performance of the game and it's being very stable in its player base numbers, I don't think we can really say that the game is dying, to be honest with you. Maybe Wargaming have tried to make some changes that you might view as though the game is dying, but I really don't think that's the case. In terms of kind of the next steps for Wargaming, what they can actually do, and what the sorts of things that they should have done differently, at least in terms of my opinion, is that there needs to be a huge amount of quality of life updates to the game to draw in new players. I feel like World of Tanks console has been very stagnant in its kind of current state. I mean, there has been changes to how the UI looks in the game about 3, 4, 5 times in the last couple of years. And we've also seen changes to, some camos and stuff like that, and skins, and the ability to add stuff into your garage as like a customizable garage. But at the end of the day, that is not like, you're not grinding the game to be able to get garage gear. Now, is it good that it's in the game? Is it actually useful? Is it cool that you can customize your garage? Absolutely. But in terms of things that I would personally like to grind as a player who plays the game for the actual gameplay, things that provide you with achievements, or things that will basically work towards creating, goals that you can look towards that are not season orientated, because of course most people looking at trying to complete the season to level 100, but a lot of people can complete this relatively easily. And the problem with that is that, once they've done that, it becomes like, what else do you focus on? Well, you've got the tech tree grind, which is perfect. You can do that at your own pace. You can play that however you want. Whether you want to delve into the tech trees, I don't know. But in terms of achievements and things that should be in the game, I think absolutely we should have some form of long-term achievements or progress tracking, or just a general update to how the stats work in the game that you can see for your own personal kind of goals and that sort of stuff. I think we could definitely deal with having, like, destroying 1,000 vehicles in a tank. You should be able to get some form of skin, or you should be able to get some form of specific emblem or something that can be added onto your tank to let people know that, hey, look, I've got bragging rights, I've taken out 1,000 people with this vehicle, or I've played 1,000 games in this vehicle, or hey, look, I've been able to survive 10 or win 10 games in a row with this tank, etc. Stuff like that would actually be kind of cool to have, and kind of gives you an incentive to learn the game more, to play the game more, to interact with the game, and, reward you for playing your favorite tank, being able to show off your favorite tank to other people and get some form of like reward for doing that. That isn't where you have to spend, 300 gold in order to buy a camo that looks cool and not that many people actually bought it. It should be, you should have some form of reward for actually playing the game, which I feel is definitely lacking on the game. And that is one of the biggest things. Like, genuinely, I would be so happy if they introduced some form of achievement or challenge system that is like long-term missions, long-term challenges, long-term, like, they're always there, permanent challenges that you complete. and get rewarded for doing so. That, I think, should be in the game. I don't see why you couldn't do that. And I'm sure Wargaming have a reason maybe they haven't done this. And of course, Wargaming, at least on the console side, are a much smaller team, I'm going to be honest. So in terms of when people compare PC to console, remember the PC game is like 10 times as popular. And the amount of people working at Wargaming developing the game on PC is much higher. So trying to maintain the same level of updates to the game, in all credit, is much harder than, what people are expecting, because they're seeing the PC side of World of Tanks. If you watch YouTube and you're seeing that they're getting these updates, they're getting these game modes, they're getting all of this, whereas the console side don't seem to get anywhere near the updates. And although I'm saying that, we should be having these updates, trying to give realistic expectation to you guys is also something that I want to say, because remember, the game isn't that big, as in, it is not that big of a studio working on this game. And so, if they do one thing, it means they can't do another thing, so prioritizing the right thing is something that they should be doing. And unfortunately, from, of course, the player standpoint, we've been seeing a lot of premium tanks and not very many actual gameplay quality of life updates that, keep players happy, which means that people are just waiting to find something to be annoyed about. And of course, that's not good for a game and not good for the players who are trying to play the game. They want to be happy, or they want to look forward to things. And unfortunately, it's very difficult with World of Tanks console to do that, since there's very little communication between Wargaming and the player base in terms of what the expectations are, in terms of where they're going with the development. And although it has got better than it was maybe 8 years ago, 6 years ago, it's definitely nowhere near where I would personally like to see the game go. And definitely more transparency between Wargaming and the player base is something that I cannot stress enough, that transparency leads to hype about things, and if you generate hype, people really want to see those things. And you also get feedback immediately. If you're saying, hey, look, we're looking at developing this, what do you guys think? And you say, look, not going to come out in any length of time. We're not saying that we are 100% going to do this. What do you guys think about the idea, though? And the players go, no, this is absolutely garbage. Everyone is saying it's garbage, it's terrible. It's probably not a good idea to add it into the game. But equally, if everyone's going, yeah, okay, cool, that looks nice, that looks cool, I can't wait for this sort of thing to come into the game, it gives you an idea, okay, people want to actually have this thing in the game, and maybe we should actually follow through and do this. And although you might not have to give specific deadlines or timelines that people are thing, at least it gives the players they have a voice, their opinion actually matters. And I think that is something that is lost, even if Wargaming themselves do look at what the player feedback actually is, which I know they do, but yeah, the player base definitely don't see that in the day-to-day basis, and I think that would be a really good change to try and at least get some more community involvement with the game and grow back a more healthy environment for the game in general. Because at the end of the day, I want to see this game actually do well. I don't want to see it just flop into a abysmal microtransaction hell, which, I mean, yeah, maybe it's already that. But either way, the same thing is that we want to see a good game. We want to see updates that actually generate hype for players. We want to see the updates actually be good for the players and improve the overall experience of the players, because at the end of the day, they're the ones playing the game. They're the ones that are going to be focusing on, constantly playing the game, paying money to actually keep the game on. And I think if you improve the player experience to a point where people are starting to recommend it to their friends or jumping back on the game because, hey, look, they've actually done these amazing updates that, give you stuff to do. And it's not just the same old game that it has been for 10 years with some flashy UI changes. I think, that would be really, really good in my opinion. So that's kind of the overview. I think in terms of where I'd like to see the game, are we there? Absolutely not. But are there things that can feasibly change the game, improve the game? Absolutely. I just hope Wargaming listened to some of the feedback that a lot of you guys are saying, and I'm sure you have your own opinions. Of course, there's going to be people saying we want more maps, and yes, maps are going to come out in the game. They're something that I'm sure Wargaming are working on, and of course I'd love to see maps as well, but in terms of extra bits, things for the actual game and the gameplay, things to work towards, I think the achievements and having rewards and having more events that are kind of, you know, limited time that reward players for playing the game, those sorts of things are what keep people playing your game throughout the entire year, and they generate the community aspect that I think has been lost since a lot of the updates came out, and a lot of older players who played from the beginning kind of disappeared off after some of the big changes like update 6.0, and although they may come back, they definitely haven't come back in the same amount, and yeah, hopefully we'll kind of see that in the future. But yeah, let me know your opinions. This was just a relatively kind of condensed video of some of my thoughts. I could talk for hours about what I'd love to see in the game and some of the nuanced stuff, but giving a good overview and kind of letting you know what my opinions are on the game, and it's definitely not perfect, but I think there is room to improve and get better, and I'm just hoping that Wargaming follow along with that same desire, because at the end of the day, if they have no one playing the game or players are not enjoying their game, then people aren't going to spend money on their game. So yeah, either way, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, and of course let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. It's the best way for me to get your understanding of what you are finding painful about the game, as well as actually what I can feedback to Wargaming themselves to at least try and do something about it. But yeah, I appreciate all you guys' time, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.